Good morning. I'm Matt Driskill, editor of Asian Aviation magazine and AsianAviation.com. Welcome to the latest in Conversation, sponsored by Metrojet of Hong Kong. Today we're speaking with an old friend of mine, Sumesh Patel. He's the president for Asia-Pacific of SITA. Sumesh, welcome back and thanks for joining me.
Pleasure to be back, Matt.
2025, we're headed toward the last quarter. COVID is firmly in the rearview mirror, but the world, unfortunately, because of somebody in the White House, it's a little bit crazy now. CETA came out in July with its results, said IT spending, and that's what your company focuses on is the IT sector of things. 37 billion last year, IT spending. What's all this money going to? And I like talking to you because I like technology, but I also have a love-hate relationship with it a little bit. But tell me what all the airports and what aviation, the airlines. I think you just did a deal with Air India. What's all the money going for?
So I'd say, when we come out with our IT Insight, Matt, we speak to over 250 senior airline and airport executives all over the world. So in our 2024 Air Transport IT Insight report, the industry overall spend, and we were told by these executives that the estimated spend for the airlines was 37 billion for the airlines. But there was additional 9 billion, which the airport is going to spend. So, it's 37 billion for the airlines and 9 billion for the airports. A large share of this spend basically is going into three key areas. One, cybersecurity. Second, biometrics. And third, of course, the sustainable IT, right? So, because the airlines and airports are clearly racing for the future, and they want to make sure that the technology what they deploy are future-proof against the threats. And of course, the other important part is the rising passenger numbers. So making sure that the technology is ready and helping them. If we look at the spending, it's the significant amount of spending is going into infrastructure also, right? So moving to cloud. Moving to modernizing the legacy system to make sure that these systems can talk to each other for airline, airports, and government. More importantly, improving on the data platforms, basically to support the real-time operations, focusing on AI, machine learning, analytics. And of course, as I said, the self-service and the passenger automation still stays on the top, right? So looking at our kiosk, our self-backdrop, automated gates, obviously these are some of the key areas of spending where we see, the investment are shifting towards more technological investment where it helps reduce the friction and, of course, improve the throughput.
Well, we'll talk about the backdrops in a little bit after the break, but because I always like to get you about those. Top spending places. Is it Europe? Is it Asia Pacific? Is it the United States, South America? Where's all the investment coming from?
So, of course, APAC is Asia Pacific is setting the pace with the bold investments. And of course, this is supported by the policy also in terms of supporting in terms of digital transformation. If you look at even in terms of the growth, we are seeing that Asia Pacific is projected to contribute over 50% of the new passenger growth by 2043, right? So clearly, Asia Pacific is seeing the highest investment. But if I can give you some statistics in terms of where the spend is going. So if you look at, the overall priority levels are, of course, much more evenly spread in Asia Pacific onto the various initiatives. The first one being, the data analytics is the top one priority, where we see that Asia Pacific is spending 69% versus 55% globally. Of course, if you look at more likely of Asia Pacific using AI in customer-facing technology services, where we see that Asia Pacific is looking at almost about 36% versus 18% in global investments. One area which I can't miss talking about is, of course, biometrics, which is also one of the biggest area, where Asia Pacific investing. About 51% of the airline and airports are investing into biometrics versus 39% globally. And finally, of course, in terms of sustainability, we see that Asia Pacific is more likely to be doing on-site renewable energy generation, almost 83% versus 64% globally. So you can see in most of the key areas, Asia Pacific is setting the pace in terms of the investment.
Okay. We were talking before the show about my latest long haul adventure to the US, and I flew through Seoul, which is Incheon's a great airport. Very nice. I flew into Las Vegas, hadn't been to Vegas in a long time. And I was pleasantly surprised. And that was one reason why I did that route, was because I hate going through Dallas Fort Worth. The TSA is terrible in Dallas Fort Worth, and the airport is not my favorite. It's just too big. But Vegas, Seoul, seemed to, a lot of automation. Even in Vegas, the U.S. is not behind on automation with immigration. You still have to see a person and all that. But Singapore, I think, has it right with the immigration lanes. They do a very good job. Last time I went through there, no problem. I was through the gate in, 30 seconds. I mean, it was wonderful. Again, you said biometrics. Are there other things that they're spending on besides the backdrop? And is Asia is spending the money, but are they getting the technology right?
Yeah. So of course, Matt, you're absolutely right? So now automation is in mainstream. It's no more, if you talk, if you would ask me the same question about 2 years back, I would say a lot of these investments are in pilot phases in terms of investment, but now they are in mainstream, right? So, and mainstream across. So if we look at immigration, biometric lanes, self backdrop, touchless check-in, and of course all the way to the boarding. So we see, the technology is really in the mainstream, and they are rapidly scaling, right? So they are, more and more airports and airlines are working together. But to your point in terms of Asia Pacific, of course, the Asia Pacific airports are the strong adopters. Because particularly, as you rightly said, in the places like Singapore, Korea, Japan, Southeast Asia, and the good part is that they benefit from newer airports, regulatory support, because any of these technology to work end to end, we need multiple stakeholders to be aligned. That means the airline, airports, government, everyone working together. You gave an example of Singapore, right? So for Singapore to have that kind of immigration and a walkthrough experience, we need the airlines, Changi Airport, and ICA working together, right? And for us, we work with all three of them, and helps us to make sure, and we are clearly seeing that is one of the key area where certainly the technologies are just the means, but for it to work efficiently, we need all the stakeholders to work together. And where we are seeing in the countries where all the stakeholders come together, we see the technology adoptions much faster. And one of the challenges which you mentioned about the other airports, which are mainly in Europe and North America, has been a challenge in terms of the legacy terminals, the interoperability of the systems, because they've been there for a long time. So if we need to transform, it needs to transform on multiple levels, also on the infrastructure and the technology. And maybe that is one of the reasons why Asia Pacific is still leading versus the rest of the world, because we see newer airports, we see the newer technology and higher investment, as we spoke about in your earlier question.
Let's, while we're on the topic of airports, I want to ask you a question about Cambodia because they just opened a new airport, and then we'll come back to SITA itself and acquisitions, things like that. But they just opened a new airport, and you had acquired a company, SITA had acquired a company called CCM to work on what they call travel spaces. The places like Techo in Cambodia, the new airport, which I'm going to go see this weekend twice. I got to pick up somebody on Friday and then take my son on Sunday for him to go back to school. It's a brand new airport. It looks, all the photos I've seen, it looks good. Uh, and there's other new airports sprouting up around the Asia Pacific region. Is a place like Teco, did they get it right? And are you doing business there with them? But have they got the design right? And is that travel space, did they get that right?
No, I think the design of the new airport, like Teco, is a chance to build from a clean slate, right? So obviously, we've been and as to your question, yes, we're proud to be working with them. So all the check-in system, the kiosk, the airport management system, we've partnered with them. So we've been working with them, and I've personally gone there many times, even when it was in the construction. So I've literally seen it coming up from where it was to what it is now. So it's really a beautiful airport. And then they've thought through in terms of making sure that they integrate automation at the same time optimizing the passenger flow, and and by incorporating modern touch points which are future proofing the capacity to make sure that they can take care of the peak loads, the peak travels, and not just looking at overall number of the passenger. And when you talk about CCM, yes, our acquisition of CCM, basically which focuses on design and spaces, means that we can help airports ensure the travel spaces are not just functional, but they are more user-centered, balancing, of course, the aesthetics, operations, and technology integration. So basically, what we are trying to do is technology by design, right? So, and then of course, CCM, they've been working with almost 300 airports, to the largest to the smallest. So for example, even at Changi, all the four terminals, all the checking desks, everything is through CCM. If you go to Qatar, Doha, all the signages, even the lounges are 100% done by them. If you go to Frankfurt, the backdrop. So everywhere you see now, bringing technology and design together to make sure the future ready. Because one way we see it as SITA that, a lot what you do at the airport today, in next 3 to 5 years, it will be done off the airport. Even your baggage, for that matter, could be taken care of the airport. So, you need to make sure the airport is designed in a way which embeds the technology, and it's kind of a walk through and a smooth flow all over. And hence, our acquisition of CCM.
Tell me about, you mentioned something about doing things off-site from the airport and everything, because when I lived in Hong Kong, and they opened the new airport there, which was right after I moved there, actually. I was one of the last people to fly into Kai Tak. But when they opened the new airport and they had the Airport Express train, you could actually check your bags in at the Airport Express train, so you didn't even have to take them with you on the train. Do they still do that now?
Yes, they do. And in fact, this is moving to the next level, Matt. For example, we do that even at the KL Central. So even at KL Central, we have a system which can help you do that. But what we are trying to do is that moving, beyond. So, for example, if you, in your travel journey, if you have, a cruise or a train, how can you have a baggage taken care, complete end to end? To your end destination, be it in the hotel or where you're going. And similarly, our recent partnership with SUTD, Singapore University of Technology and Design, working with Changi Airport and MBS. So for example, if you're in the hotel, just imagine that, when you call someone to collect your luggage, that luggage is checked in all the way. So that trolley which comes to check in has everything inbuilt where they can scan your passport, check your documents, print your baggage tag. So, when you're done with almost everything just in the hotel itself in your room.
That'd be great. Very quickly, and then we got to take a break. SITA's revenue was up in 2024. You acquired, again, you got TCM, but then you also acquired Materna IPS. Any other top acquisitions you want to highlight? And are there other areas that, you mentioned the travel spaces with CCM. Are there other areas you're looking into or other companies that are on the list?
So of course, Matt, SITA grew its portfolio through both innovation and acquisition. So it was both organic and inorganic. And what we are trying to do is that in addition to Matin IPS, which is helping us to strengthen our passenger processing portfolio, complete end to end, CCM, as we discussed, is technology by design. There's another acquisition which we did for a company called Assistim, because this moves SITA into operation control center. So basically offering the operation control center as a service, offering to smaller tier and mid-tier airlines, and also for the large airlines if they want to train their OCC operators. We do have that as part of assisting which we can be done. The other one which we did was also a JV with a Smartsea, a company which we launched, which is offering the same IT solutions for the cruise line. So for the maritime. So bringing it the complete end-to-end technology. And recently in Singapore, we have worked with Singapore Cruise Center. So now you can have exactly the same experience what you have at the Changi Airport at Singapore Cruise Center at SCC. So clearly, we are looking at more investment in making sure that the complete end-to-end journey for the passenger, irrespective of their travel.
Okay. Sumesh, we need to take a quick break here to hear from our sponsor, Metrojet of Hong Kong. We'll be right back after this.
We're going to have the crown jewels of Asia, and I promise you we're going to have the nicest and busiest business aviation hangar in the region.
And we're back. We're talking to Sumesh Patel. He's president for Asia Pacific of SITA. Sumesh, you knew I was going to ask you this. Self bag drops, they drive me crazy. Had one and it wasn't just Singapore this time. It was in Las Vegas when I was flying to the U.S. Southwest Airlines, not one of my favorite airlines. I've taken bus trips that are better organized and more comfortable. They had the same thing. You go, you check in, push a few buttons, you get your bag tags. As much as I've flown, you think I would be an expert at being able to put these tags on, but I'm not. So the reader never scans it properly because I did something wrong or whatever. Again, I mean, I know everybody uses them, but uh, to me, they're just not user friendly. What can we do to fix that?
So I would say, obviously, the self backdrop technology is evolving, and for us, what we look at is, from our point of view, design and the seamless passenger flow, which matters, right? So at the end of the day, how we can make it more easier. And I can give you one example, which I'm sure will solve a lot of these problems, not for you, but for me and for many other passengers who have that similar challenge is looking at biometric enabled self backdrop. So this is real. It's not something which is, something which is going to come in the next few years. So for example, we did that in Bangalore with our IPS acquisition. So as our IPS solution. So, just imagine that, you've registered yourself for your, biometric process. And when you go for a backdrop, you just look at the screen, it recognizes you, it will print your back tag already, and you just put it up and then it goes. You don't need to scan your passport or scan your boarding pass and then do 3 or 4 steps. It basically reduces that. The other thing what we are also trying to do in baggage area, Matt, is like we do biometrics for humans, we have a solution to do biometrics for the bags. So using computer vision, to make sure that sometimes if you lose your bag tag in transit or something, you lose your bag. The biggest challenge is when the bags are not reunited, is when the baggage tag is lost, right? So if we have, with a computer vision, have a technology of biometrics of the bag, it easily helps to reunite. So there are technologies which are real, I can tell you, maybe not your next travel, but maybe in 6 months you would see something which is more biometric enabled, and of course looking at the new technology like computer vision for the bags.
Well, let's keep talking about bags. It's interesting. I'm going to kind of combine two questions into one. I was reading your latest report about 2024, 5.3 billion passengers that year. Mishandled bags dropped to 6.3 per 1,000 bags. Tell me what the improvements, what is leading to that improvement. Second part of the question is, I love the Apple AirTags. I've got them on my keys. I've got them on my wife's keys, my son's keys, so that I always know where the keys are, because my wife has a habit of leaving her keys at home or at the office or something like that. And I like to be able to go, know where they are. And I've seen a lot of airports or airlines where they're incorporating, they come out with some application that says register your Apple AirTag with our service. And why do they need to, is that a solution in search of a problem? I mean, why do I need an additional airport service or airline service for an AirTag when I can just look at my iPhone and say, okay, here's my luggage. I've got one tag. It goes in my toilet kit and it just stays there. So I know where that is, and that goes in the suitcase. So I know where it is all the time. Why do I need to do an additional application through the airline or whatever?
So maybe I think I'll take your first question first in terms of clearly, we see that, the mishandled bag are dropping, and they are at their lowest level since 2007. So clearly, the technology is working. But even today, it costs about $5 billion annual cost to the airlines. So still, there's a huge cost which can be, contained and then reduced even further. And like you rightly said, right? Today's passenger, wants that bag journey, and they want to have a reliable and connected bag journey, complete end to end, with smarter tracking, right? So, how can you do that? And one of the thing which like you mentioned in terms of why do we need, the airline needs to, you need to share your data with the airlines, because when you look at the baggage, it's not just the airline, right? So there are multiple stakeholders in the complete, end-to-end ecosystem. So there are ground handlers, there are airports, there are airlines, there are multiple stakeholders. And it's very important that, this information is shared with everyone. So if we share and like Apple AirTag, the reason why you need to share is because then the agent or someone would have that information, because it's your AirTag. Because without you sharing or giving the consent, is also on data privacy, right? So they can't just assume that you want your AirTag to be traced. So they want a consent that, okay, are you, is it okay for us to look at the location or have the data of your air tag. And even from, I think, Apple perspective, they will not want anyone to just use the data unless you as a user authorize for them to do it. But the good news is that, our solution World Tracer, which helps streamline the entire baggage tracking system and the recovery process, right? So today, World Tracer is used by almost about 500 plus airlines, almost 2,800 airports, and the ground handlers. So it's the only industry shared platform for tracing, tracking, and resolving the mishandled baggages. So clearly, the technology is evolving, and for example, if you lose your baggage, you still need to go and stand in the queue, fill up the form. All of that is now automated. So and you can get the details yourself. And our recent implementation, which we did with Lufthansa and which is in operation for more than a year, it also does auto reflight. So, for example, if you lost your bag, you firstly don't need to report. It automatically reflights and then notifies you that we are sorry. You won't be happy, but at least you know that that your bag is lost and by which flight and when you will get it. So clearly, the technology is evolving and making sure that you get it. Because at the end of the day, the result is that the passenger get the peace of mind, and at the same time, the airline have the tools to act on the information.
I think actually I have to give a shout out to the industry overall. I mean, I'm 63 now and I've been flying since I was a kid. I mean, I remember when you could smoke on airplanes. That's how long I've been flying. And I think in all my years of flying, I've I've lost one bag. I didn't lose it, the airline lost it. And I got it. I flew into somewhere in the morning and I had it back that evening. So it wasn't like I was out 3 or 4 days and had to go buy clean boxer shorts or anything. But so I actually have to give a big shout out to the industry for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as you rightly said, the industry is really evolving. They're making the right investment. And of course, like us, we partner with them to make sure that we fuel the right technology to make sure that it's much more easy, not only for you as a passenger, but also for the airlines. How can we help them reduce their costs and then provide better service?
Yeah, and I fly with a lot fewer bags these days. I did my long trip to the US. I had one bag and one backpack, and that was it. And but when I moved to Cambodia, I had 6 huge suitcases.
Wow.
Only 2 of which had clothes in it. The rest was my computer gear. And which leads me into my next questions, and we're going to combine probably these 2 questions again. And we talked about this before, Minority Report, Tom Cruise movie, Steven Spielberg, I think, did it. And it's the kind of technology that I think we're heading toward, where you walk into a shopping mall and it scans your retina and it says, "Oh, welcome back, Mr. Cruz, and how did you like those trousers you bought at Gap the other day?" Are we getting to that point in the next 5 years where we're going to have that kind of technology? Will passports be necessary? Physical passports in the future? And second part of this is, and again, we've talked about this before, but it's getting to the point where air passengers, they're almost doing everything themselves except flying the plane. So they check themselves in, they print out their own bag tags, they go through immigration without talking to human. I mean, I like human beings, not all of them, and especially crazy people in the US right now. But I like the human touch in a lot of ways. Is too much automation distancing us from other people? Is it causing problems? So let's talk about the biometrics. Are we going to be walking through the airports and it recognizes us already and has our Starbucks order ready? And where do we stand on the automation scale right now?
So, Matt, I think it's an interesting question, right? So for me, the way we look at it, that the much of the technology, it exists today. For example, if you look at biometric boarding, we spoke about immigration gates, the secure identity checks, they already exist at major hubs. The challenge is that this is not at every step of the journey, and it varies from airport to airport where you travel. So, the global adoption, it varies because of regulation, the technology investment. But in our view, this is going to change, and it's changing very rapidly. Like we spoke about earlier, right? So we've got 63% are already looking at investing into these technologies. So, moving forward, this will change. And also to your question in terms of digital passport, it's real, right? So we've been working with ICAO and IATA. So today we have a solution, our SITA DTC, Digital Travel Credential, where you have your digital identity, which not just verifies your passport, but all the other documentation. For example, all the docu check of your visa, whatever you need in terms of a complete end-to-end travel is validated digitally. So, and then one of our implementation, which we have done in Aruba, is, before you fly, you create your digital token, and then you have on your mobile, you choose where you want to share this data at which touch point. So, for example, when you check in, you can share it when you arrive, even to the hotels. It goes not just on your travel journey, but complete end-to-end. So you have one digital identity, which you own on your device, and then you have the data privacy. You own the data and say which touch points you want to change. So for me, it's already real right now, but to have a global adoption or a wider adoption, maybe 3 to 5 years, it will certainly happen. So it's basically looking at complete intermodal. And going back to your second question in terms of, is too much, is technology too much? I would say balance is essential, right? So you do need the right balance. And from my perspective, if you look at technology, basically is a means, it's not the end, right? So ultimately, the industry is powered by people. So if you look at passengers, staff, regulator, so it needs to have the right mix of both technology and people for one to have the right experience of travel. And, industry isn't aiming for people less travel. It's basically helping, with a smarter division of roles between the people and technology. So, how can it make it more seamless and more easier, but not taking away the complete touch of the people touch to go for it. So, for me, it needs to have the right balance.
Balance is important in life in general, I think. Sumesh, we're running out of time. Get the old crystal ball out. What do you see happening for SITA, say the next 6 months, a year from now, and then sort of for the traveling, the air passenger as well for the next 6 months, say a year from now?
So I would say there are a key, I would say, if you look at the technology and if I had a crystal ball, I would say there are 4 areas which are very key, where the industry will go. The first one, of course, AI everywhere, from predictive maintenance to disruption management. AI will certainly be embedded in every operation we do. The second one is on digital identity ground, so the DTC, which we spoke about. And the more countries will scale biometrics to the digital credential pilots. The third one would be baggage transformation. So that would continue. So like our partnership with Apple AirTag, with Apple to share the AirTag data with the airlines and airports. So this will continue to evolve with services which are improved and provides better tracking. Which will become more visible for the passengers. So, as a passenger, you would get better. And then finally, I would say the fourth one, sustainability, which will certainly be in focus, right? So, and then which will help with operational efficiency, looking at various areas in terms of flight ops, automated ground vehicles. This will continue to grow alongside the SAP adoption.
Okay. Sumesh Patel, the president for Asia Pacific at SITA. Thanks for joining me in conversation.
Thank you, Matt. Pleasure. It was a pleasure speaking to you again.